Or maybe you just like being a gunman. I suppose you prefer the word shootist.
I don't think of myself as either.
No, you're some godlike creature of infinite knowledge, aren't you?
I'm a dying man, scared of the dark.
Guys, welcome to a classic movie review of The Shootist from 1976, starring John Wayne, Lauren Bacall, James Stewart and Ron Howard. Now, this was directed by Don Siegel, and it's a western saga of an aging gunfighter close to death who rents a room with a plan to die in peace. However, his past and his reputation soon catch up with him. Now, a western less concerned with the epic taming of the West by means of barroom brawls, zany horse stunts and daring do, but a movie about old age, illness and death, one that spookily mirrors its star John Wayne's real life. Let's take a look. Now, for a start, there's undoubtedly something emotionally poetic about the fact that John Wayne would make a film dealing with death as the final film in his career, playing a character who is diagnosed with cancer just a few years before he himself would be diagnosed with the disease and sadly pass away. And like movies such as McCabe and Mrs. Miller, The Outlaw Josie Wales, and even The Last Hard Men, it's also a commentary on the end of the modern Western film, the dying days of a genre that had helped carry the American film industry almost since the birth of cinema. The Western would never truly die, of course, but like Wayne's character, J.B. Brooks, its best days were long behind it.
Mr. Brooks, you are a notorious individual, utterly lacking in character or decency. You're an assassin.
It's going to which end of the gun you're on.
Rubbish. You lied to me. You made a fool of me. You took advantage of me.
So based on the novel of the same name by Glendon Swarthout, first published in 1975, we have an aging gunfighter played by John Wayne who rides into his hometown of Carson City, Nevada in the year 1901 to visit an old friend, Dr. Hostetler, played by James Stewart, who came out of semi-retirement at Wayne's request. And it's here that he learns that he has an inoperable cancer that will kill him in a matter of weeks, if not days. Now, Wayne then calls upon local widower Mrs. Bond Rogers, played by Lauren Bacall, to rent a room at her quiet boarding house. Unfortunately, she has a hero-worshipping son, Gillum, played by Ron Howard, at the height of his Happy Days fame. And despite the gunslinger wanting to keep his affairs private, the gig's soon up, and an assortment of visitors, not all of them friendly, begin arriving to put a spanner in the works.
We got J.B. Brooks here. He's killed 30 men.
Gillum, go to your room.
Now, this isn't really a Western for viewers looking for Wild West thrills, wall-to-wall action and epic shootouts. This is the story of a guy after all of those kinds of shenanigans whose plan now is to go about putting his affairs in order during his last days on Earth. A guy who says he wants to die a quiet death in the comfort of Bacall's boarding house. But after his friend and doctor explains what that death may entail, arranges for a final shootout in the town saloon with 3 local gunfighters who all want a piece of him for different reasons. He wants to go out as a gunslinger rather than suffer the throes of a painful bedridden death.
There's one more thing I'd say. Both of us have had a lot to do with death. I'm not a brave man, but you must be.
Now is John Bernard Brooks in The Shootist, John Wayne's greatest performance. There's definitely a conversation to be had, I'm sure of that. I know how many people will instantly say that it's Ethan Edwards in The Searchers, and I'd agree, probably. But look again at this, and there's an understated sadness with Wayne here. An almost hidden vein of regret and shame in his face. And it's important to remember Wayne was unwell himself during the filming of The Shootist, which probably feeds into his work here. There's an excellent third act moment between him and Bacall where he knows he may be going to his death, and so does she. The pair keeping their emotions suppressed.
Goodbye, Mrs. Rogers.
Goodbye, Mr. Brooks.
So, as I mentioned in the introduction, this is a film about old age, about illness and about death, but that doesn't mean it's a downer or bereft of action. We do get some shootouts scattered around, particularly in a late night assassination attempt on John Wayne when he's tucked up in bed, much to the enthusiasm of Ron Howard's young fan. Now, Lauren Bacall, who also wasn't doing much work at the time, was again personally requested by Wayne, and she's excellent here. Bacall, of course, had cared for her husband, Humphrey Bogart, as he succumbed to throat cancer. Here, she's no fan of the gunslinger at first, but slowly mellows as she finds the man beneath the myth. And speaking of myths, I love that The Shootist has an opening credit sequence that's a montage of a handful of John Wayne's previous movies, which serves to give some history to the character, but also, in a kind of meta way, says to we, the audience members, look at the journey through cinema that this man has gone on. It's a bit of a bold creative choice, but another that, in hindsight, adds to the poignancy of this being John Wayne's last ride. Now, what Wayne lacked in straight-up acting skills, if you like, he more than made up for with his larger-than-life personality, which pretty much dominates all the films he's in and the cast he's surrounded by. Here, he more than holds his own against some of the film industry's greatest actors. So The Shootist, of course, was directed by Don Siegel, who'd made half a dozen Clint Eastwood movies, including Dirty Harry, as well as Invasion of the Body Snatchers. He doesn't need to stage large-scale action here, so he focuses on simply filming his actors with a level of care that's probably quite rare in a John Wayne Western. He also has cinematographer Bruce Surtees, who shot The Beguiled, Dirty Harry and Josie Wales, so the whole thing looks gorgeous. We also get Elmer Bernstein scoring the music, so that's not too shabby either. So The Shootist is one of a small handful of films that can be counted as the last great westerns. This, Josie Wales, Breakheart Pass, The Last Hard Men. The genre's never really been the same or held in as high regard, which isn't to say there haven't been great entries since Pale Rider, Unforgiven, The Assassination of Jesse James, Open Range, etc. But in a curious way, the death of John Wayne, arguably the western's greatest poster boy, signalled the death of the western genre itself. The Shootist wasn't a great box office hit. Rocky was taking all the money that year, along with remakes of A Star Is Born and King Kong. Now, shamefully, I've not mentioned supporting cast members like Richard Boone, Harry Morgan, Scatman Crothers and John Carradine, many a famous face who came to start alongside the Duke just a couple of years before stomach cancer would come for him, aged 72. Wayne, of course, left a fearsome legacy of 142 leading roles, which I think I read is the record. His first lead was in The Big Trail in 1930, but he'd been acting since 1926, right up until his final curtain call with The Shootist in 1976, half a century later. A career that demands respect, and here, a movie that does also. Go check it out.
I found out early that most men, regardless of cause or need, aren't willing. They blink an eye or draw a breath before they pull a trigger. I won't.